Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Taylor Combaluzier, a mining analyst at Red Cloud Securities, Inc. Today's webinar features Fathom Nickel, which is exploring for high-grade nickel sulphide deposits in Saskatchewan, a province that certainly has a rich history of mining and mineral exploration, but you might not have thought about it for nickel exploration. Today I have with me on the webinar Ian Fraser, who's the CEO and Vice President of Exploration, as well as Doug Porter, who's the CFO and President at Fathom Nickel. The format of today's webinar will be comprised of two parts. In the first part, Ian will provide an update on Fathom and outline what investors have to look forward to through this year and into the next. In the second part, we'll take your questions live. So please send us your questions using the chat and we'll get to as many as we can. You can type in your questions at any point throughout the presentation. To start, I'll handle the disclosures and then we can get into the presentation. So for Fathom Nickel, there may be some forward-looking statements made on this call. I would direct listeners to the cautionary note on page 2 of the Fathom Nickel corporate presentation located on the company's website. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Please see our most recent research located on our website for Fathom Nickel specific disclosures. With that out of the way, I'll turn it over to Ian, who will continue on with the Fathom Nickel presentation.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much, Taylor, and thank you, Red Cloud, for organizing the webinar. Yes, as mentioned, we are a nickel-focused company exploring for nickel in the wonderful province of Saskatchewan. And we can skip through this. As mentioned, Saskatchewan, and in Saskatchewan is the Trans-Hudson Corridor, and specifically the Trans-Hudson orogeny. And within that, we have these Proterozoic-aged, the Thompson Nickel Belt, the Raglan Nickel Belt in northern Quebec. And why would nickel mineralization stop at the Manitoba-Saskatchewan border? Well, it doesn't, and we have two properties, both with some nickel history, and we're now in a position where we're advancing these things to the point where we think the province of Saskatchewan can host world-class nickel deposits. So, the previous slide was the where slide, and this is what we call our why slide. And specifically, when you find these things, they're worth a lot of money, which is obviously good for shareholders, and in this case would be very, very good for the province of Saskatchewan. And just recently, 2022, the sale of Noront Resources to Wyloo for $617 million Canadian. And I'm highlighting here the Nova Bollinger sale, Australian dollars 1.8 billion. And of course, everybody's very, very aware of Voisey's Bay when that transaction occurred to the tune of $4.3 billion dollars. And down below, what I've done is we've listed here the historic grades at the historic Rottenstone deposit, and I've bold-faced these just so you can compare those to some of the grades of these deposits that had liquidity events. And then down towards the bottom, I'm highlighting intersections that we've had in a very short period of time of exploration at our Goshagar Lake project. So we're hitting very good nickel grades, and in some cases at Albert Lake, the PGEs are second to none, and we hope to continue to build on this. Very, very quickly, just the election yesterday, the second coming of the Donald. One thing is consistent regardless of who the winner was, is this need to secure critical metals in North America. And I think a bit of the shine has come off, EV and battery metals, but, we are still reaching record sales with respect to EVs. But what's not going away is the demand for stainless steel and all the various other things that nickel is used for. So again, it's just very, very critical that we lock down supplies of critical metals, nickel, copper, cobalt, platinum group elements, and no better place than the province of Saskatchewan. In North America, province of Saskatchewan and Canada, obviously. This is not a pretty picture. We, along with our peers, have had a bit of a tough go here of late with respect to market cap and there's just an overall lack of love in the market for all things nickel. But again, I think this is it's a bit of a long-term play, and we feel very, very confident that this nickel market's going to turn around. Some people are predicting $20,000 per ton towards the end of the year. We'll see. But currently, we're about 140 million shares outstanding. We have, just as of Monday, made an announcement about a upcoming financing, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that towards the end here. So let's get into the projects. We're a 3 portfolio company now. The largest of the 3 is the Albert Lake project, 90,000 plus hectares, host to the famous Rottenstone mine that was in production in 1965 through 1969. Small tonnage, but produced fantastic magmatic nickel sulphide grades, 3.28% nickel, 1.8 copper, and 9 grams platinum, palladium plus gold. There's not too many places in the world where you get that mix of metals. The middle project, the Fraser Lake, that was a recent acquisition. There is some historic drilling there where ultramafic rocks have been intersected. There are some pretty good geochemical results with respect to nickel, copper, cobalt, and platinum. So that was a most recent addition. And the bottom property that you see here, this is our Go Sugar Lake project. So this is 23,000 plus hectares. And here in 1966 through 1968, the Go Sugar Lake deposit was defined by a Scurry Rainbow Oil, a Calgary-based oil company. And they proved up, this is non-compliant, but roughly 4.3 million tons at a grade of just under 0.3% nickel, 0.08 copper. They did not include cobalt, and we know now that there is a very, very significant cobalt credit to the Go Sugar Lake mineralization. And just very briefly, is our sort of focus now. It's been increasingly difficult to finance one project, let alone 2. So our exploration efforts, the latter part of 2024 and going into 2025, will be focused at the Go Sugar Lake property. Just a little bit more on the history. As I mentioned, there was a non-compliant resource defined 1966 through 1968. But one particular drill hole has always caught our attention. That was hole number I-12. And here they intersected 290 meters of 0.58% nickel. This is continuous mineralization right below the casing down to 290.4 meters. And with that was 0.11% copper. And at the very, very bottom of this intersection, some high-grade nickel where they did analyze for cobalt. And this is 9.7 meters at a grade of 2.4 nickel, 0.35 copper, and 0.14% cobalt. Anytime you get north of 0.1% cobalt, that is very, very good. That is high-grade cobalt. And I just want to point out, because we will be talking about the Mall Lake occurrence. So the Mall Lake nickel occurrence is roughly 10 kilometers to the southeast of the Go Sugar Lake deposit. And here too, 1967 drilling, they were getting up to 8 meters of 1.1% nickel, 0.24% copper. There has been no exploration there since 1967. And fortunately, some of this core is in the L'Orange Core Library. And we did a little bit of work with respect to some relogging and taking pictures of the core and some PXRF analysis. I'll get into that as well. The rectangle, this is the outline of a historic VTEM survey flown in 2008. We've been able to reinterpret this data, and we've defined multiple targets that are very, very Go Sugar Lake in their geophysical signal. So in a short period of time, 16 holes and just over 5,000 meters of drilling, we have put this historic deposit back together again. The historic record, unfortunately, the vast majority of it is lost. With our efforts, we've put at least another 100 meters to depth of continuous mineralization. And importantly, we're defining high-grade shoots within this lower-grade envelope that was defined 1966 through 1968. And the borehole EM has been a tremendous tool. We follow up every drill hole with borehole EM, and this sulphide breccia that's carrying the 2 to 3% nickel is extremely conductive, and the borehole EM is pointing us to where we need to position our drill holes. And also on this property, within the Goshager Lake property itself, we do have this VMS style of mineralization, where we're getting lead and zinc mineralization. I think this is very, very interesting. It's just anytime you've got a large endowment of metal within your property, that's a very, very good thing. And also it's, the Flin Flon Snow Lake is not too far away from the Thompson Nickel Belt. So, this relationship between VMS and magmatic nickel sulfides, there could be something of significance to that we haven't, at this point, we're just completely focused on nickel. So to briefly summarize what we have done, we're looking at a long section on the left, and this is a grade shell in the orange, and the rectangles are areas of off-hole conductivity as defined by the borehole EM that we have not drill tested yet. And you can see what I've illustrated here with this dashed line. This is where we think the historic bottom of the deposit was as defined 1966 through 1968. But with the drilling that we have done, and again, the borehole EM is steering these drill holes, we have intersected magmatic nickel sulfide breccias that are running 1 to 2% at depths that are now 400 meters below surface. So this is new mineralization that we have encountered, and it remains very, very open. The rectangles, again, are just telling us there's more conductivity off hole left and right and below and above. So tremendous potential to expand on this high-grade mineralization at depth. In the soft red color here within this chart, I'm not going to go through each and every individual intercept. I do have the nickel equivalent on the far right-hand side, but we now know that this mineralization is contained in what we call a variable textured gabbro, and there's disseminated mineralization throughout this variable textured gabbro. And an example of that is our hole number 16, where we have 185 meters of 0.3% nickel, 0.1 copper. The nickel equivalent is 0.41. But within that, we do get these shoots, these zones of higher grade material. 13 meters that runs 1.1% nickel, 0.08 cobalt, which gives us a nickel equivalent of 1.4%. And then within that, we do have a high-grade section, almost 3 meters of 2.43, 0.18 cobalt, and a nickel equivalent north of 3%. So when you get this combination of nickel, copper, cobalt in these high-grade shoots, you get a very, very good nickel equivalent grade. So I mentioned the variable textured gabbro. So if you can imagine this intrusive, this gabbro, it's intruded within a norite, and it's a dynamic, quite a complex, intrusive. The footwall rocks are gabbro as well, but they're not mineralized. The hanging wall norite is not mineralized, but this mineralization is contained within what we call the variable textured gabbro, and it has thicknesses of 100 to 120 meters. This would be a true thickness across the intrusive itself. But again, within that, as you can see illustrated in these brighter colors, these are the steeply oriented high-grade shoots within the variable textured gabbro. And I think this is where possibly they didn't recognize the higher grade material to its full extent, 1966 through 1968, because they were drilling vertical holes. So you can imagine a vertical hole coming down on the footwall side of this contact, you're potentially going to miss these high grade shoots. And again, this is just some illustrations of the sulfide breccias with all this pyrrhotite with disseminated pentlandite throughout. Tremendous conductor. So if you happen to drill a hole that you're not terribly pleased with, but you have a very, very strong off-hole conductor, every time we test one of these off-hole conductors, we're intersecting sulphide breccias. And so conceptually, what are we chasing here? What are we looking for? And the work that we've done, we recognize that disseminated sulphide mineralization and the sulphide breccias, it's the same. But the sulphide breccias are an accumulation of the disseminated sulphide. So this mineralization has been remobilized within the variable textured gabbro, and it will concentrate if there's some sort of we recognize there are shallow faults. Will faults collect or concentrate the magmatic sulfides and form these magmatic breccias? This is where the high grade is going to be. So within this variable textured gabbro, and it's wide open along strike, we're going to continue to see this disseminated sulfide. We're going to continue to intersect these breccias, and they're all going to be more or less interconnected by sulfide veins. And here's an illustration of a vein that we've intersected in our hole number 8. Very, very good photograph, polished sulfide breccia. And up here in the top, this is your typical disseminated sulfide within the variable textured gabbro. So understanding the geochemistry, understanding, we don't have a full understanding of the metallurgy, but we do have a good sense of what the geochemistry of the sulfide mineralization is. We've really been able to use this now on surface to expand the footprint. So in June, we were up there mapping and sampling and prospecting. We collected over 500 chip samples and used the PXRF to analyze each and every one of the chip samples. But in these rectangles, this is based on grab samples. In these rectangles, this being the area of the, I'm sorry, you can't see my cursor, but in red is the Goshager Lake deposit projected to surface. The black is the 2024 drill holes that we drilled. And in these rectangles, we are recognizing this is rock grab samples where we're getting the same nickel tenors. We recognize that it's magmatic nickel sulfide breccias. It's in ultramafic rock immediately to the north of the Goshager Lake deposit. And we're continuing to see this along strike 300-400 meters in variable textured chrome-rich gabbros that have nickel tenors comparable to the Goshager Lake deposit, running anywhere from 3 to 4% nickel tenor. So this is very, very encouraging. This has opened up this project along strike, a minimum of 300 to 400 meters. And I've got a window up there pointing to the very last drill hole that we drilled in the fall of 2023, this being our hole number 11. Intersected variable textured gabbro, and we have 3 very, very distinct and very strong borehole EM off-hole anomalies that we have yet to test with the drill bit. So again, using our geochemical knowledge that we've gained, we know that this variable textured gabbro is unique in that it's very, very chrome rich. We did a soil sample, soil geochemical survey this summer, and this is what the illustration is on the right. The Goshager deposit right smack in the middle here. The bright magentas, this is the upper 95th percentile of nickel in soils. So you can see that area number 1, we have this nice linear feature developing to the northeast of the Goshager Lake deposit, and immediately northeast, we have this 600 plus meter zone of better than 95th percentile nickel in soils. And it's unique in that it's linear. Is this some kind of a dike situation? Is this potentially an indication of a feeder to Goshager? And we know, you go to any sort of nickel camp around the world, these things that tend to occur in clusters. And what this soil geochem signal is now telling us, from grid west to grid east, this is a strike of 4.6 kilometers. We have this very, very favorable geochemical signature, this geochemical footprint that is 4.6 kilometers in strike and very much open to the northeast and very much open to the southwest. In August, while we were building our camp at the Goshager Lake project, we did this high-resolution drone survey, mag drone survey. And here, the mag results are mimicking the results that we see in the soil geochemistry very, very well. The polygons 1 and 2 are the same as the geochem anomalies 1 and 2 that you see on the right-hand side. And this area off to the west of Goshager, here we're getting up to 1,650 ppm nickel in soil with very, very good copper and very, very good cobalt as well. And again, you can see that it's coincident with a mag high. And you can almost speculate that the Goshager, when you look at the mag signal, there's a bit of a bulge there. It's quite a linear feature, but there is a bit of a bulge, and perhaps this is an indication of a regional structure that we actually see in the VTEM. And this would be a tremendous conduit for these sulfur-saturated magmas to work their way up through the crust and form these deposits. So this is very, very encouraging. When you get things stacking up, when you get your geochem stacking with your geophysics, and we're having tremendous success with the drill bit at the deposit, we really think we can open this thing up immensely with respect to its overall potential. And again, we're looking at the same things, but just doing a little bit more high-level math and looking at a multivariate response where we're looking for nickel combined with copper, chrome, magnesium, and cobalt. Again, the circles with the black outline, these are the most extreme anomalies when we do this sort of multivariate analysis. And you can see that these brighter colors are defining areas where we have coincident nickel, copper, cobalt, magnesium, chrome in soils, which we feel is indicative of the favorable mafic, the ultramafic rock type that we are seeking to expand on the Goshager Lake deposit itself and to find more of them. And just to wrap up Goshager here very, very quickly, I mentioned the Mall Lake nickel occurrence 10 kilometers to the southeast. We were able to go up there on what core remains available in Orange, and with the PXRF, and I must caution, this is not a proxy to an assay. This is PXRF analysis, which is very, very dependent on where the beam is positioned. If you put it right on a piece of pentlandite, you're going to get a very, very high number. But when we compare the PXRF results that we got with the PXRF results from the Goshager Lake, Goshager is in red, the Mall Lake values are in blue. The higher grade nickel falls on the same array, that being the red array that you see on the diagram, which is nickel to sulfur on the right-hand side. And on the left, we have a table here that is illustrating historic 1967 drill holes that were drilled at Mall Lake. And without going through each and every single one of them in pink, in the soft red here, I've highlighted an interval in historic hole number M2, 3 meters of 1.4% nickel, 0.35% copper, and the PXRF was getting anywhere from 165 to 1100 ppm cobalt. Now, when you compare that to our intersection at drill hole 23009, at a depth of 370 meters below down the drill hole, 3.25 meters of 1.35 nickel, 0.36 copper, and the cobalt assay of 0.12. So this nickel to copper ratio, the nickel to copper and cobalt, when you start doing the math, these are one and the same, which is telling us that potentially there's a common source to the Goshager Lake deposit and Mall Lake. And again, this is a distance of 10 kilometers. So there's some very significant plumbing going on within the 23,000 hectare Goshager Lake deposit. And again, I think this is just fantastic evidence that there's going to be not only Goshager, not only Mall Lake, but there could be multiple nickel, copper, cobalt deposits within the 23,000 hectare Goshager Lake project. I see that I'm coming up to about 25 minutes here. I'll just very quickly go through the Albert Lake project. As I said earlier, Our exploration efforts are going to be at Go Sugar going forward. We feel there's a quicker path to defining a resource at Go Sugar than there is at Albert Lake. But as of the last winter drill program that we did at Albert Lake, we are as close as we've ever been to replicating rotten stone-like grades. Drill hole number AL24077, which is down in the area that we call the NIC5 Trombley-Olsen. You can see it over here on the left. We intersected ultramafic rock that returned 0.4% nickel. There was only 3% sulphide in this particular ultramafic intersection. And when you do the nickel tenor calculation, it comes back at somewhere between 10 and 12% nickel tenor. The historic Rottenstone deposit has a nickel tenor of 10 to 12%. Our Bay Island Trend discovery, which is 500 meters west-northwest of the historic Rottenstone, you can see that middle picture of drill core, beautiful neck-textured sulfides. That was running 1.35% nickel. The image on the top, that runs anywhere from 3 to 4% nickel. It's net textured exactly the same as the intercept in hole 52, but nickel tenors and overall grades are lower. And what I'm saying here, if you put the mineralization that you see in the top image into that piece of drill core down at the bottom, you're going to get 3 to 4% nickel and possibly as high as 9 grams platinum, palladium plus gold. So this is why we feel we're close. Hole number 77 validates the spectacular nickel soil geochemical anomaly that we have occurring roughly 1.5 kilometers south of the historic Rottenstone mine. So again, we feel that we're getting close to replicating Rottenstone-like grades, but given the struggles of a junior company at the moment, we're going to temporarily put the Albert Lake project on the shelf and focus our efforts going forward at Go Sugar Lake. And just, you know, this is the area that we've been focusing our exploration on, but soil geochemistry is telling us that we've got another area developing to the south that we have not done any sort of further exploration on. So yeah, just a schematic diagram. The hole number 77, as I said, I think it validates the soil geochemical anomaly. We recognize that this is an area of structural complexity. You need that for these magmatic sulfides to pool up. We have a plethora of off-hole borehole EM anomalies in the drilling that we have done south. A lot of them are shallow and they remain untested. So again, just we haven't given up on the Albert Lake project by any means. We think there's tremendous potential there. And again, I feel that we're getting close to replicating Rottenstone-like grades. So I think I will stop there, Taylor, and open up the, we put out a press release. There's a little bit of gold on Albert Lake, but I'll leave that topic for another day. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Ian, for that great presentation. So now we'll turn to the Q&A portion of the webinar. And just a reminder to everybody on the line that you can type your questions into the chat at any point. That said, we do have quite a few that have come in already. I think the big one that has come up a couple times is just getting clarity around when you're looking to drill and what's on tap for that and which target.
Yeah, well, what we're trying to do here, and Mother Nature is cooperating. I'm keeping tabs on weather in the L'Orange, Mississippi area of northern Saskatchewan. There's no snow on the ground. It's been cold, which is perfect for developing ice. We'd like to, with this financing that we announced, we're hoping to put a small crew together and have them, we can prospect these areas where we've identified these soil geochemical anomalies east-northeast of the Go Sugar Lake deposit. So, I've seen photographs where we built the camp. There's definitely outcrop out there. And if we can determine that this is more of the variable textured gabbro, and if it's got the same sort of nickel tenors of 3 to 4% like Go Sugar, this is a drill target. And what we'd like to do in addition to the prospecting between now and Christmas is we'll go out there, cut a bunch of line, and do some more surface EM surveys. And there too, that'll just give our confidence level another boost to get them into the drill stage category. So to answer the question of where we're going to drill, I mean, we've got a really nice problem on our hands here. We have a lot of drill targets. We can continue to drill at Goshagar, and we will, but we can't lose sight of this expanded footprint. And maybe, if things suddenly start becoming a little bit more ultra-mafic than mafic, and currently Goshagar is sort of in the mafic category, maybe we're going to stumble on the PGEs in this mix of mineralization. So it's important that we source out, we test these other targets that we've developed here just this past summer.
Right, and I guess diving into that a little bit, we have a question just wondering how the soil and rock geochemistry program, as well as the drone mag survey, how that data is influencing your thinking around the strategy and how it's affecting your thought process.
Well, it's that proved to be an invaluable program. Initially, the guys would go out and they would chip sample every single outcrop they came across, and then bring all the chips back to camp and do the PXRF analysis, and that expanded the footprint around the Goshagar Lake deposit itself. But now that we've further expanded the footprint via soil geochemistry, and then seeing that there are mag highs associated with the soil geochemistry, and just the overall, the point I was trying to make with combined magnesium, chrome, nickel, copper, cobalt, touch wood, these aren't going to be barren sulphides if there is indeed a rock source to this soil geochemistry. We're feeling pretty confident that this is indicative of subsurface favorable mafic to ultra-mafic rock. So, again, we didn't get out to prospect those areas. I mean, we didn't have the soil results when they were out there prospecting the end of June. Now that we have the weather cooperates, get out, do the prospecting here next week. And, this exercise will just continue to use the combined soil geochem, rock geochem, and the drone mag surveys proven to be very, very useful in terms of helping us with our mapping and understanding of these things.
Perfect. Okay. Maybe we'll give you a break and we can bring Doug in for a couple corporate questions that have come up here. Just wondering about management shareholding as well as where your treasury currently sits.
Sure. I see we have a question. Management shareholding seems low. Please comment. And I think that's always a relative situation. I guess I'll start by saying Ian and I both intend to participate in the current financing. Ian has had more liquidity than I have over the course of the last 12 months and has been in the market picking up shares. I have sporadically. But I think if we go back to the formation of Fathom and our IPO, I think we can look at our holdings as a reflection that management didn't get a bunch of free stock. We wrote checks for every share that we own in the company. So unlike some of our peers who load up on really, really cheap stock, as a private company or as part of the IPO, we just simply didn't do that. So I think that's part of the answer. And as our liquidity, our personal liquidity situation improves, we expect that we will be significant buyers in Fathom at these and increasing levels. In terms of current treasury, we're right around $300,000. As Ian mentioned, we announced a financing on Monday with a goal of raising about $750,000 hard dollars. That process is underway. We have had a number of orders and commitments come in, and we think that that's we should be in a position to close that by the end of next week.
Perfect. Okay. So let's see what else we've got here. We've got, I guess before pivoting a little bit, we'll come back to kind of the exploration plan and news flow on that front. I guess what's the what do you think are catalysts kind of between now and Christmas? Will there be a schedule put together or a plan, or will it be in the new year?
As again, planning to do the prospecting and the line cutting of the geophysics. Absolutely. I'm going to be heading up to L'Orange in the next couple of weeks to do some additional consultation. We're in the process of getting permission to utilize historic trails in and around the area of Goshager Lake itself, with the intent of pulling a drill in there come January when we have sufficient ice. And that's moving along quite nicely. So, if we can get a drill in there and find a contractor that's willing to leave the drill there, we're looking at a cost savings, an overall cost saving per meter of somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 to $150, if not 200. Doug likes to think 200. I'm a little bit more cautious, but so this is we're sort of strategizing around getting drill equipment, getting fuel in there overland, as opposed to having to fly it all in by helicopter. So this is in the works, and then of course once we finish the geophysics, we'll spend some time digesting all that, go into full drill targeting mode with the intent of hopefully drilling within the first quarter of 2025. Very, very busy in the background. We've got people working on grade shell models of the drilling that we have done. Vanessa's doing a wonderful job of putting together a lithological three-dimensional model of the historic Goshager Lake deposit itself. So, I don't know if that's particularly newsworthy, but there might be some conversations and some webinars that we might do that brings that into the fold, just to give people a bit more of an update of what have we accomplished with the 5,000 meters and the 16 drill holes to date.
Right, and I guess this person is just wondering on clarity here with their question about do you tend to press release kind of a drill plan outline with meterage and objectives? Is that something that would come in the new year?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I'm really looking forward to sitting down with the team and advisors and just going through the process of selecting areas to drill. I mean, I feel very, very confident that we can drill holes at Goshager and continue to hit these high grade sulphide breccias, but also very confident that we can demonstrate this process further along strike. So to answer the question about once we have that figured out, and I'd like to think that we're going into the next drill program with a sufficient budget to allow us to drill a minimum of 5,000 meters and hopefully as much as 10,000 meters. And again, with the drill there and being able to bring in a supply of fuel, we can continue to just drill right through the summer and into the fall uninterrupted if everything aligns. And a few things need to align.
Right. Okay. So that's in terms of budget. You think with this raise that'll set you up for that first phase, and then going forward, it's kind of results dependent, market dependent, etc. Yeah,
we're not thinking we're going to be drilling based on this up to $750,000. We're going to have to do this again in the near future, and we're optimistic that opportunities will present itself where we can do a raise which would be focused on drilling meters.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Okay.
I think that lines up, Taylor, as well with one of the other questions here in terms of interest and possible participation from a major or a strategic. And we can't speak in terms of specific names. Of course, we're under several NDAs with strategic/majors. We are advancing those discussions. Some of the recent discussions did talk about or were around further refining drill targets, i.e. with this program that Ian has just elaborated on. And at that point, there very much could be an opportunity for an earn-in/JV with a strategic. So, in order to finance a 5,000 to 10,000 meter program, it may not be solely an equity raise. We may have an opportunity to bring in a well-heeled partner to assist in that program.
Perfect. Okay. I think we've touched on kind of all the questions, and those that maybe not directly, we address them in other answers. So maybe just put out a final call for any other questions, and I'll give Ian a minute here just to kind of give us the top 3 reasons investors should buy their stock, or any kind of closing thoughts on the company for investors.
Well, thanks for that very direct question, Taylor. I feel very, very good that people are waking that we need to lock down critical metals. The province of Saskatchewan is a tremendous jurisdiction to be exploring. I've got a long history in Saskatchewan, and quite frankly, I think it's just one of the better places to explore in the world. And I think, given what we've done and this very, very methodical approach and this continuing to expand things, I think this is one of the better nickel plays in Canada. Obviously some of the peers have a little bit further along with their drilling, but in terms of where we are with upside potential, I think we're right up there with some of the best plays in the country at the moment. So again, I just very, very confident that we can expand on the historic deposit, but I think we're on the cusp of demonstrating that there's going to be more like them and potentially things that are even higher grade. And then if we do have the opportunity one way or the other to get back at Albert Lake, I just feel that we're really knocking on the door there. And we as a company, we're the first company since, the historic Rottenstone deposit has a history going back to 1929. Fathom Nickel is the first company that has demonstrated that historic Rottenstone deposit does not occur in isolation. Those metal grades are a function of a large, open, dynamic nickel sulphide system, and we're the first ones to prove that. So I just think we just got to keep this ball rolling, and we'll continue to deliver good results.
Perfect. Okay. That said, the final call for questions brought in a couple, all of them centering around the gold at Albert, and anything to say about ramp, and if there's been any contact between the two companies. Any comments you have around those topics.
I'm not going to comment directly on ramp. We were building our camp, and Doug and I said, well, there's an opportunity here. We've got a helicopter. Why don't we send a crew out and go do a little bit of prospecting in one of the areas that we identified as structurally very interesting, just based on our gradient mag survey. And we collected a bunch of samples. One of them came back 0.9. I ran a bunch of check assays, and the 0.9 turned into 2.68. So, there appears to be gold down there. There's nothing we can do in terms of a follow-up right now with winter coming. I think, Yeah, I'm just sort of waiting to see what the neighbors to the south are going to come up with, and that would sort of lend an overall clear understanding of what might be going on with respect to gold. But yeah, I mean, I think their press release was they're waiting for an amendment to allow them to drill. So we're all sort of waiting on the sidelines here to see what might come of that. With respect to permitting, I mean, we do have the camp at Rottenstone, and we're fully permitted on the entire 90,000 hectares. So, and as we are at Ghost Sugar as well. So, just kind of waiting on the sidelines to see what might come out of the ramp camp.
Perfect. Okay. I think with that, we'll leave it there. We're coming up on 45 minutes here. So we've had lots of questions and interaction from the audience, which has been great. I would like to thank Ian and Doug from Fathom Nickel for taking the time to host the webinar today with Red Cloud Securities. And thank you to everybody for tuning in with us.
Yes, thank you very much, everybody. Yes.
Thank you.